Hello and welcome to Chaos Dwarf Radio, the Brazen broadcast, brought to you direct from between the knots on a hobgrot's crotch. My name is Oxymandias, and with me today I have Chitzkoi.
Hi everyone.
Reaver.
Hey guys.
And I have Michael.
What's up?
So today, guys, this is a kind of mini episode. We're just going to be talking about the Artisans competition, which has now been and gone, or as we called it, the Artisans competition, because as listeners to the podcast might know, we kind of took it upon ourselves to have a bit of a mini competition within the competition of who could create and rank the highest with the best Arsecannons. So we're going to be talking about everybody's entries. The actual specific brief for this competition was to create a piece of siege equipment, and it was a very, very wide sort of brief, and people took it in all different kinds of directions. But we're going to be talking about each and every one of those entrants and discussing them here. But first of all, maybe we should just let people know kind of what it is we've been up to since people heard from us last. I can start. I really struggled to get my Artisans competition done in time because I managed to injure my hand, and so found it very, very hard to sculpt. And for the people who use the forum or the Discord will already know, but people who don't, I managed to snap a tendon in my middle finger on my right hand. Apparently, it's a common sporting injury. For an athlete like myself, this is quite common for things like that to happen. However, my injury actually occurred when I was pulling up my trousers after going to the toilet. So there you go. It was actually halfway through a game of Warhammer, playing Warlords of Erewhon. My friend had just sent his general on Griffin behind my lines and started absolutely destroying me, and I had very little to do to hurt this Griffin with. So my mates all just took the piss, saying I was losing this game so badly, I just went to the toilet and snapped my own finger in half just to get out of finishing the game.
Oh, this will never be not funny.
Yeah. It's one of those things, isn't it?
Happens all the time.
Happens all the time. I'm sure it does to some people. Yeah, these things seem to happen to me. It was my missus, my wife, who saw me through the competition because she was the one who had the idea that I physically couldn't mix green stuff. I mean, it's fun, isn't it? Green stuff doesn't take a lot of strength to do, but my hand was that weak that I couldn't do it. And she had the idea of me using just regular air dry clay instead, because you can mix that with water, making it quite soft, can't you? And I ended up finishing the model that I made using clay, and it came out okay in the end, thankfully. But yeah, that's about all that I was able to do for that. And then in terms of gaming, I've been playing an awful lot of Warhammer 40,000 2nd edition recently. Started a little campaign with a friend of mine. He's playing Genestealer Cult, so I'm playing the Imperial Guard, and we're playing through that glorious old edition where everything has a card and a table, and every psychic power requires its own little card game, and every weapon has its own template and its own armor penetration, and Lord knows what else. It was from a much more complicated time in the game, but it's not as complicated as people make out. I've read horror stories about this game, people saying it was really clunky and really hard to use. And maybe it's where I've played Necromunda, old Necromunda, so much. It's that system was based off of this. But I've found it pretty intuitive, actually. I haven't found it particularly hard to use. And I've enjoyed the game as well, because if I have a criticism of perhaps the more modern editions of 40k, it's that they don't feel, to me, as much like a battle simulator anymore. They feel very, very like video gamey. Things having auras and buffs and nerfs and stuff, and tanks being able to shoot in all different directions. And I mean, tanks having wounds just blows my mind anyway. So this game, to me, feels a little bit more like a real-life battle simulation. I've been quite enjoying it. Well, what have other people been up to? Chits, you've been away recently, haven't you, mate?
I have indeed. I've been hiking through the pleasant countryside of England and the rolling hills on a week's vacation to celebrate a big promotion that I've scored at work. And at the same time as doing that, I've also therefore spent all of the money from that bonus payment on a raft of new purchases. I'm getting into a finishing the purchases for a project that I've planned for a Militarum Tempestus 40k Stormtroopers army that fields Stormtroopers from throughout the years. And I'm also going to build in some of the Necromunda range to that, which is fun. I've got another kit bash planned with some more dwarf hammerers, which are also on their way. And then I think in terms of what most people will actually have experienced, because as you guys know, I still don't have a house, so I still don't have any hobby space with which to do that. I started the Chitz's Grey Mountain blog, which at this point is just an inventory of shame. It's a big inventory, and I was surprised by the number of people who replied to it. But alongside that, I did actually add some value to the good people of CDO by also publishing 7 new installments of Among the Wicked Dawi, which take us into the caves underneath the fortress, populated by the Hobgoblins and the Greenskins.
If you don't know it, go check it out.
Yeah, I'm very behind in Among the Wicked Dawi, but as I've said to you, Chits, I've got 6 weeks off of work now, so I am going to be getting very, very deep into this. I'm looking forward to being able to absolutely binge on this over the next couple of weeks, mate. You've been writing prolifically.
What was fun is that the section is all about, looking really deeply into the 93 Hobgoblins range. And I think we've all got Hobgoblins on the brain because of the Hobgrots release, and then of course the upcoming painting contest is. And so it was just fun that those two things were happening all at the same time, as I had already been planning to write a lot about them.
Yeah, it's all come together really nicely, hasn't it? Yeah, nice one, Chits. And MichaelX, what have you been up to, mate?
Well, basking in the glory of the Arsecannons contest, of course. Well, since last time, actually, a lot of my time went to making the entry. A lot of my time went to making the entry. I printed some kill teams. I painted some Skaven, and at the current time, I'm already making my golden head entry, actually, which also will be quite a lot of work, but I'm enjoying it. I rediscovered how much I like sculpting, and for some reason I've gotten much better at it than my previous attempts without actually practicing. So that's weird, but well, there it is. Yeah, and I have a few weeks holiday now, so that's also fun.
Lovely. And Reaver, what have you been up to, mate?
I've been playing it pretty safe here recently. Have gotten back into eBay selling a little bit just to kind of offload some of old bits, and Chits has actually helped me kind of identify some things I scored in a couple of free hauls, so I could offload those from my mountain. I have to say, Chits, I am looking forward to probably the most comprehensive comparison of scale across miniature ranges that has ever been seen on the forum when you are co-located with your miniatures. So looking forward to that. But yeah, not much else here. Luckily, I got my scale out again, so I was able to weigh all my trousers and under trousers, make sure they weren't too heavy, and avoid any injuries in the future.
You know what? Do you know what I've just realised? Oxy, I mean, the solution's been staring us in the face, mate. You just need rope.
Like a hobgrot, yeah?
You just need to tie the trousers up with rope, and then this won't happen. And you could pull a little rope somewhere on your clothing, and then presumably drop them at the drop of a hat.
Yeah, do you know what? The Hobgrots have got it right, actually, because they do away with trousers and presumably underwear altogether, and it is just ropes and strategically placed armor plates. I'll have to have a word with my boss and see about dress code at work, but yeah, could be something to try.
Yeah, I think you can make that happen. When worst case, if things are still heavy, you can always get that rope tied up to a nice pulley system and levers that give you a little extra mechanical advantage, so you never have a problem again. Anyway, aside from that, not too much else. After the competition that we're going to talk about in a bit, kind of been a little distracted. Of course, eBay selling leads to eBay buying, as Chits knows. So I've got a few extra kind of entities to fill out some of my units, and working on the a special retinue unit for the emissary that just showed up. So that the Great Unification emissary just came through my way. Sent that along, and Xander was kind enough to give me some fun extras. So I'm looking forward to sharing that in the near future. But working on kind of fluffing out that unit to a full rank. So that'll be a fun one to post. So kind of a little bit of a collaborative effort there. So that's my main Chaos Dwarf thing that I've been working toward lately.
Lovely, nice one. All right then, fellas. Let's get stuck into talking about the Artisans competition. So we had quite a lot of entrants actually to this competition. We had 15 entrants now. To some people, 15 might not sound like a ton of people, but to a forum of our size, 15 represents an awful lot. And when you look at previous competitions, that is one of the larger amounts that we've had people entering. And the thing about the Artisans competition as well is it's not just a painting competition. It's a competition of just general creativity, of having an imaginative idea, of often either kit bashing or sculpting, or at least converting something to become something new. It has extra steps in it. And although you don't vote on painting alone, obviously painting is also a factor you take into account when you do look at a miniature. But it's really, really impressive that the amount of users who took the time to kind of commit to this competition and to create a set of stunning entrants whose the only thing that you can say they have in common is just how utterly different they are from one another. Like, people have taken this brief and they've ran with it in so many different directions. I mean, even take, the three of us who entered, all of us making demon cannons, Arsecannons. We all took it in totally different directions when we did it. So what we'll be doing, ladies and gents, is we will be discussing each and every one of these entrants. What we'll do is we will link, in the description of this podcast, we will link the forum where you can see each and every one of these, one after the other. So if you want to look at them first and then have a listen to this, or look at them while you're listening to this, it could help an awful lot. And if you're listening on YouTube, as I think actually most of our users are listening on YouTube now, most of our views or listens are coming through that platform. If you're on YouTube, you're actually going to see these pop up on your screen. So that'll be a little bit easier for you guys to be able to see the things that we're discussing. All right, so let's kick off, gents, with the first entrance into the competition. Now, the first one, number one, was from a user named Iceman. Now, I have to come straight out and declare some interest here, because Iceman is actually a very, very close friend of mine in real life. One of my gaming buddies, one of the guys from my gaming group. So yeah, I have to declare a bias towards his work. But to be fair, I don't think I need a bias here, because it's really, really impressive what he's created here. He has created a set of kind of mutated slave ogres that are heavily armored and given all manner of horrible sort of warp weaponry. Like, I can see kind of Gatling guns and a big power claw and giant maces for fists. And some of you who are a bit more well versed in the fantasy ranges will probably be a bit more specific than me, but I think he's kit bashed between some Skaven Rat Ogre models and some Ogre Kingdoms models, hasn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing that I actually just recently used and acquired in a bits auction was some of those ogre heads, and they're absolutely fantastic. And I think it works really well with is it the Storm Fiends? Is that the true name of the kit now?
May well
I'm a
be,
bit
yeah.
behind, but
It is.
Yeah, it works really well.
And I think it really kind of is taken some of the dumber stuff from the Storm Fiends and not used it. So, on the backs, they don't have little rat babies. They don't have the chest gun that some of you think of when you think of the Storm Fiend with the Gatling cannons. He's turned it down and turned it into something much more distinctively Chaos Dwarfy. And I think that's great, because what he's done is he's taken that tension that we've always had, which is in their Warlock Engineer manifestation, the Skaven have always been a little bit on our lawn, Chaos Dwarfs, right? They've always been the ones who've got like elaborate weaponry and demonic technology and things that might explode or they might kill you. And what he's done is I think he's nicked the good bits from the Storm Fiends, and then he's made it distinctively Chorfy and made it his own.
Yeah, he's done really well there. Something as well to take into account with Iceman, I'm sure you won't mind me saying this, is he's someone who has previously really, really not enjoyed painting. He's always been well into the collecting, well into the hobby, well into gaming, and painting has been the part of the hobby that's been a bit of a drag for him. And you read a lot about contrast paints online. Some people think that that they're the second coming. Some people think that they are some kind of cheating and there's a bit of snobbery around them and stuff. I happen to think they're a brilliant, brilliant tool to have in your arsenal. And the release of the contrast paints and the technical paints have really turned him into someone who loves painting again. And do you know what? You want to see painting miniatures out there. You want to see painting miniatures on the table, and his look absolutely fantastic. When you consider that he's using 90% those contrast paints, and I think he's using a bit of that new Tesseract glow, and he's using some of those basing sort of technical paints now as well. I think that's something that they've done really, really well with that new paint range. That it's enabled people to it's taken away a barrier to entry, and people are able to create really beautiful tabletop miniatures.
I mean, if you look at the paint job, I wouldn't really guess it's mostly contrast, to be honest.
No, you
So,
wouldn't, would
like,
you?
quite a lot of work, actually. Well, it's probably still a lot of work, but they look well.
Yeah.
Very, very nicely painted. I mean, the combination of colors is very good. So, I mean, contrast or not, it's his choice of colors, and it works well. And also
Yeah.
the conversion of the models is very spot on. It's as actually I can't say much more than Chit said, but the first thing I at first glance I figured it was one model. It took me a few seconds to realize he made three, and that made it a lot more impressive because having made one model, it's a lot of work to make three models and paint them and enter them on time. So yeah, good job, well done.
Yeah.
And honestly, I never would have believed you if you'd told me that this guy didn't have a love of painting, because I think that he's done an absolutely bang up job of them, and they look really, really tip top.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that's something he's found. He's found that love of painting again. I believe with the metallics, if it's anything like his other Chaos Dwarfs, what he did, see the red armor. I believe he was doing if it's anything like the other ones, doing a contrast red over a silver base coat, which makes
Yeah,
quite
that's
a it makes a cool sort of look, doesn't it? Yeah, nice one, Iceman.
I used the Tamiya X whatever red translucent paint for that. It's a real candy apple effect, if you know the color. Like classic old hot rod cars. But yeah, this is very close, to be honest.
Yeah, and the bases turned out nice too, and that's probably very. I mean, they look great. It's a nice like kind of windblown ash look, and I imagine something that you could do a lot of in a batch and get a lot of models painted. Simple, effective. Can't beat that.
Yeah, definitely. Really, really lovely conversions. I mean, yeah, beautiful, beautiful stuff. And again, this is going to be so different to everything else we're going to look at. We're going to keep repeating this because we're going to have a look at like lots and lots of different entries today, and no two are the same. And like, don't expect to see 3 slave ogres in the next entry, guys. It's going to be something completely different every time. And in fact, shall we go on to the next entry now? Now, the next entry is from forum regular Zod the Immortal, a guy whose painting we've discussed at length on this podcast already. The man who puts colours together that we would never have dreamt of going together. And yet somehow pulls it off in a very kind of old school and yet somehow new school sort of way. And he's done something similar to what he did in the last competition, where he hasn't entered one thing, he's entered multiple things. So what we can see here is he has entered a giant dinosaur with a team of Chaos Dwarfs riding upon it. He has entered a what did they used to call them back in the 80s? Was this the Juggernaut? This was the big siege tower. Chits, you'll know better than me, mate. What was this one called back in the day?
It was indeed the Juggernaut.
Yeah, so he's got a Juggernaut there, lovely. And he's also entered some like horribly mutated chaos spawn sort of creatures being goaded forward by Chaos Dwarf with a pointed stick. So yeah, tons and tons to talk about here. Lots of details to go into, gents.
Shall we just divide them and discuss each part of it separately?
yeah, shall we talk about? I think that's a good idea. Shall we talk about each of these separate pieces because it's too much to kind of talk about as a single thing. So let's start off with a dinosaur, guys. I think this is a Lizardman Stegodon that's had some conversion work to it, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I love the dwarf on top. He's so characterful, and I love the pink purple shading on his belly. Also, the guy in front with the flamethrower or whatever.
Yes.
I love his helmet. It's so cool. Bit of a Mexican wrestler vibe though, but it's a funny guy.
Yes, a luchador. He's very cool. Very cool.
Yeah. Also, the turquoise shield is very well painted. It's a beautiful color.
Yeah, I think we specifically commented on the use of turquoise in his last round of entries in the last competition, and yeah, it's a nice stark look, but it definitely fits, and he's tying in the reds everywhere very well, and then the turquoises seem to be something that ties together the various models of the entry.
And what he's doing as well, what Zod's doing here is he's throwing together so many different styles and so many different kits into one piece. And yet, once again, somehow he's pulling it off. I mean, his army is definitely chaos with a capital C. There's always something crazy going on. But I mean, you've got the kind of Mesoamerican style lizard man circle thing going on behind the dwarf on top. You've got the dwarf's axe, which is very much like a kind of like Celtic-y and stuff like that. And then you've got the Chaos Dwarfs at the front, kind of looking like old Chaos Dwarf Marauders and stuff. And yet it works. It absolutely works because his army, to me, always does come across as chaos in the purest sense, and I do mean that very much as a compliment to him. It feels like his Chaos Dwarfs, I imagine, would be utter lunatics.
I agree.
There'd be no surrender, there'd be no retreat from that lot, would there?
Yeah, there's something. He's really evoked something of the old school range, I think, throughout everything he's made. And that sense of anarchy that came out of the pre-Big Hat era really comes through in this. I've just been vaguely looking around on the internet to try and tell whether his Juggernaut sculpt is secondary market, as in it's kind of a tribute sculpt from a supplier, or the extent to which it's scrap built. I think he should definitely get in touch with us and tell everyone on the board where it comes from, because as a siege tower, it's really wide and really practical, and it really looks like it could actually be used in a siege, where the original 80s Juggernaut is quite narrow and not silly, but certainly doesn't give you that sense that, oh, if this thing trundled up to a wall, it'd be in serious trouble. But he's made a massive miniature by making that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm not sure where it's from. If I had to guess, I know Scotia Grendel do a big resin Chaos Dwarf Juggernaut style thing, but I might be well off the mark there. I haven't actually looked at that in enough detail. But you are right. The old one, the nostalgia for it is amazing, but when you actually look at it by modern standards, it's dinky, isn't it? It's going to be much smaller than the average castle wall. It's not going to be laying siege to much. You know, it's the catapult at the top of it as well. Like flaming material at the top. Very cool.
Yeah. Also really nicely picked out contrasting colour, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Because he's used a lot of cool colours the rest of the time.
Yeah. And then let's perhaps talk about the Chaos Spawns here. Now, I think these Chaos Spawns aren't from the Chaos Spawn kit. I think these might be from the Altar of Chaos, or whatever it's Chaos War Shrine. I think it might be from that, the big Chaos Altar that's being dragged along by a couple of mutant ogre types from the Slaves to Darkness range. I think that's where they've come from.
No, yeah, I agree, and it looks like they are, and their backs looks like he's done some work to kind of remedy wherever that War Shrine was resting. I'm not too familiar with that kit, but that looks like he's done some work there to kind of bring those into something just like more like a hunchback model. It looks nice.
And one really fun thing about this, if you look at the minder, the guy who's kind of goading these two creatures forward, I think that's a Hobgoblin from Admiralty Miniatures on Etsy. But so front rank, you've got the Hobgoblin there with the spear. Now, if you look very closely, behind him, there is no Hobgoblin. On the other base, there is just an empty pair of shoes, suggesting that this spawn at some point has just grabbed the Hobgoblin and eaten him.
Love it.
Yeah. It's easy to miss, isn't it? But it's there, just a little empty pair of shoes.
And that's what gives the whole 80s vibe to it, because it was all beards with snakes and men with little men on their heads, and this kind of anarchy of like a dinosaur and a siege tower and some chaos spawn and a dwarf. I believe if you look at the Hellsmith to the side, it's a big hat with another dwarf coming out of the hat or sitting on top of it. Right? It's just crazy. And I think that's a really nice energy to have on the board after all these years, to see that 80s tradition being carried on with new interpretations and using a miniature. We never see dinosaurs. Let's face it. We never see a stegodon in a conversion.
Yeah, absolutely.
The best thing about all his models is, even though they're pretty old school and a throwback to the 80s, his painting scheme is really, well, according to me, it's really modern. So the combination of both is really interesting, because it looks old school, but it doesn't feel like it's an army from the 80s. It does, but it doesn't, if you know what I mean.
It's retro, not old.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, that's not going to look at a place on anyone's battlefield today, is it? That turns up to your local gaming store or your gaming club or whatever, and you're just impressed. You're not thinking, "Cool, has he dusted this off from 30 years ago?" You're just impressed because it looks awesome. It fits in today, but it tips its hat to that older tradition. And I think that you've hit the nail on the head with the word anarchy there. I think that was the word I was potentially searching for with this army. It is anarchic, isn't it? Yeah, great stuff. Let's plough on, guys, because we've got 15 of these to talk about. Next up, I believe it's Iron Hayden, isn't it? Now, you guys might remember from the podcast, Iron Hayden was the one who entered the giant Hobgoblin in the last competition. He was a regular Hobgoblin. He just happened to be the size of a siege Juggernaut or something, and his color scheme is so instantly recognizable, with that bright green skin and those bright purple clothes. To me, it's almost a bit evocative of the Green Goblin from the old Spider-Man comics. And what he has is a group of hobgoblins riding on a chariot with a big old bolt thrower, and the chariot is being pulled by a giant woolly rhino, I think from one of the Ogre Kingdoms kits here. It's really, really impressive. And I happen to know that Hayden uses the 9th Age system. And after our recent conversation with Tyranno, I can totally see where this fits in that army book.
Yeah, and I think Iron Hayden's thing has always been his army is 93 hobgoblins only. And he doesn't do Chaos Dwarfs, as it were. He does independent Darklands, Scythian Hat hobgoblins. And the conversion work that he's done here to take a very precious miniature, actually, a full original bolt thrower, and to blend it in with that ogre kit. The one that is a dual kit between the Noblar scrap launcher, and I can't remember what the big ogre cannon is. That's the ogre version of the kit. I'm just trying to.
I know the model. I can't think what it's called.
Blaster?
Iron Blaster. That might be it. Yeah.
And it's a really neat conversion, because he's not got the big ridiculous ogre horns on the side. He's just made this lovely little tower, and at the top of it is this original bolt thrower, which looks much more admirable and glorious. And because he's got the original bolt thrower crew, it all just looks like it's a modern interpretation of a flawless 1993 concept.
Yeah.
I mean, this could just be a kit you buy from Games Workshop.
You're not wrong.
It's obviously a kit bash, but to me, it doesn't really feel like a kit bash. This could just be store bought. That's how well it looks to me. This is one of my favorites, actually. I really like the, as you said, the purple ropes, but that's universal and all this stuff. But the combination of these models and how he built it and the position of the goblins on the machine is it's really smart. I love it.
It really is, yeah. And I guess this is 2 entries so far that I've since looted ideas from. The Ogre Kingdom's barrels and the barrel with the scoop in it, just absolutely choice pieces. Also just love that he uses one of my favorite Tomb King's skulls from the Tomb King's Warriors there, the one with all the missing teeth. it's a fun little ad there. He's got some really awesome bit sourcing in this thing, that's for sure, to kind of meld that bolt thrower to the scrap launcher kit. And yeah, like you guys said, it turned out looking really seamless.
I'm actually holding Hayden, who is a mate of mine through the forum. I'm holding him responsible for the fact that I'm definitely buying a scrap launcher kit now, because it comes with the Iron Blaster cannon. The thing is, somewhere out there, he's got a Hell Cannon sized cannon barrel that he can convert into something else at any moment. You know what I mean? And that, in terms of GW multi kits, that one's quite an old one, but gosh, does it hold up in terms of versatility?
Yeah. So Hayden, if you're listening, mate, Chitzkoi, who normally makes very, very few Warhammer purchases a year, he really thinks about it. He doesn't make any impulse purchases whatsoever. It's your fault that he's buying this kit now, right? Our usually reserved friend.
Hayden knows that, because as a Hobgoblin collector, obviously, I've been working on making sure that the Hobgoblin market changes for a little while now. So he's more than aware of the influence he has. But I think this is kind of one of those signs that, like, there are things for the Chaos Dwarf collector in almost every destruction and chaos army, if you bring that creative eye to it and you're willing to, get the tools out and have a go, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. All right, let's plow on to the next entrance. Next entrance comes from one of our long-established forum veterans, the man who, as we've often said, has in Warhammer Fantasy Battles 10,000 points of Chaos Dwarfs, and that's after he gave all his Hobgoblins away. The man collects like no one I've ever known before. This is Zanko's entrance, and he has entered a Chaos Dwarf. Is this a bolt thrower trebuchet kind of love child thing going on here? Onaga? I'm not sure how I'd classify it. Some kind of catapult, isn't it? Now, this creation, this siege engine, something I really, really like about it is the face on the front, the kind of goblinoid face that's sculpted on it, which is really, really evocative of like those old sort of Kev Adams goblins, those old 1990 style things. They used to put a lot of those faces on the front of the Orcs and Goblins sort of siege engines in those days. And it's just absolutely brimming with old school personality. And the second thing he's done that's really impressive is he's made the movement tray into a walking diorama by having this kind of twisted old gnarled tree behind it as well. What do we think about this one, fellas?
I absolutely love it. I mean, as you said, the focal point is the face and the trebuchet, and it's beautiful. I hope he sculpted it himself, because otherwise I'll have to buy it. It's a really nice piece, and it's one of those models. Well, most of them are, but it's one of those models you can look at for quite a long time and see new stuff every time you look at it. It didn't surprise me that this was Zanko's, because if you go to his one of his blogs and you look at the models he makes, there's trees and most of them, or a lot of them. So yeah, I pinpointed this one pretty quickly, but still, it's a beautiful piece, and I love the I know he said at some point that he would consider changing out the dwarves, but actually I think they work really well with this. And I would leave it just as is. It's perfectly fine as is. It's a really beautiful piece.
Yeah, I think the retinue that he's gone with, this just has so much diversity. There's so much to look at. I particularly like kind of the guy in the back with the signaling horn. But there's just so many little details to pick up on everywhere. I was even reading one of the forum posts that somebody suggested one of the only improvements could be to have one of the crucified slayers hanging from the tree, and I do tend to agree with that. I think that'd be a hilarious addition. But and one of the images, with the the view straight on from the front with the face, and then the tree in the background, it just works really well. And that's a hard thing to pull off sometimes when you're trying to fill up that much space on a base. But that's something he seems to do really successfully all the time.
So the face, to me, is a direct reference specifically to the faces that were on the 2 Boar Centaur pushed Whirlwind and Tenderizer models. And the face it's not one of those. He's clearly made it himself, I assume, unless this is a kit, but I don't think it is. And it honestly looks better than the originals in terms of the amount of detail, the way it's got more of a kind of green skin aesthetic, and obviously it is green as well. It looks like they've taken the soul of some poor hobgoblin and turned it into a very large, bolt thrower looking catapult thing. I'm sure some medieval weapons enthusiast can tell us exactly what that's called. Once again, I'm getting big 80s vibes from this, with the dwarves with their weapons and shields and holding everything out like that. And I just think it would be such a time warp moment if you were to face this thing. This is exactly what the sculptors of the original range were going for when they created it.
Yeah.
And I think he's exceeded what they achieved.
Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Should we crack on to the next one? Number 5 is from the podcast zone, MichaelX. Right. How do I begin to describe what you created, Michael? As listeners will know, we had the internal competition within the Artisans. We had the Arsecannons, where 3 of us decided we were going to be sculpting our own Arsecannons. And Michael has created something utterly, utterly unique and striking and probably illegal in many territories. This is a great, big, bloated demon. This is like a kind of like, almost looks like if you were to poke it with a pin, it might explode somewhere. It's like it's bursting at the seams, this creature. It's grotesque. It's covered in growths and warts and pustules and all that kind of stuff. It's chained them to a great big metal platform. Kind of like a carriage. I can imagine this linking really well with some of the Legion of Asgore range, where they had the big guns and the skull crackers and stuff that could be attached in parts of whole train, sort of thing. It tips his hat to that. And this great big creature is, I believe, Michael, you created this. You might be able to tell me more detail. I think the only thing that is physically actually connecting it to the machine is a big old hoop around its inverted sphincter, isn't it?
Yeah, sorry, I'm still laughing with it. Yeah, it is.
It's not on words that I thought I'd have to say online, but yeah, it is. It's attached via its inverted sphincter.
I mean, where do I start? I've said it on my blog. I was building this thing, and at some point, Admiral told me that he really doubted that an Arseccannon entry would make it to the top 3, or even win it. But even make it to the top 3 would be really hard. So, yeah, at that point, something like clicked, and I was like, okay, over the top of this. So, yeah, I just went crazy with everything. I was like, should I do boobs? Well, why shouldn't I do boobs? Well, how is he going to fire? Well, let's put a hot poker to his testicles. Why not? So, yes, it's file. But that was the whole point. I wanted to shock in a hopefully somewhat funny way. But yeah, I guess I succeeded somewhat because I made it to 2nd place.
Yeah, you did, mate. You secured silver, and it's an inclusive model. It's got balls and breasts. I mean, what more can you need?
Let's go further, though. No one who has seen this model is the same after they've seen it. Michael, you knew this when you were making it, when like small children in your house would come in, see what you were working on, and fall into fits of giggles. But like, you've changed this, because this is, first of all, it's a fully functioning iron demon carriage, which I think grounds it in the lore. I also think the thing that, all of the intricacies, all of the tiny details, that stuff is great. But the thing that I really want to praise you on, even though it's not part of the contest, is the paint scheme itself is just this magnificent work of contrast. Because you've got this bloated, great, unclean one style, corpulent thing. But then you've painted it in Zinchian bright blue in a way that with these pink growths and polyps and prolapsed rectum and all this kind of stuff, just pop visually out from the completely normal Chaos Dwarf industrial effect carriage that it's sitting on. I think one of the things that makes it so magnificent is you really get the feeling that, like, yeah, this is just one of the horrifying things that the Chaos Dwarfs think is normal, because everything else that's going on around it is just completely congruous, fits in with a Chaos Dwarf army of like, yeah, we're getting on with stuff. We've got a job to do here, folks. We've got to put the brand on his testicles so that he'll shit cannonballs. That's just another day at the office.
I mean, the color scheme of the demon was probably the hardest decision I made in the whole thing, because, if I went green, it would have been Nergal, and if I went with any other color, it would have been, it would either be red and not really blend in with the rest of the carriage, because the thing I started with is I want the carriage to be matching with the rest of the Forge World train. So that's where I started, and that's how I started to paint it. And then I was like, okay, how can I make the demon pop out? Because you don't want the demon to blend away in the background with the carriage. So green didn't really work. Other colors were weird. And actually, I started with purple and pink, which in itself worked well enough, but combined with the red and the gold of the carriage, and even the green I had in before, it made it really Christmassy. And I don't really want my Arseccannon to be Christmassy, so I just started dry brushing different shades of blue over it, and well, actually really started to enjoy the color scheme and the popping colors of it. So yeah, thank you. The original color you can see on the testicles, because I didn't really paint over them. I figured that it would be nice to have them in the original base color.
It is, and I think, like I say, it's actually a masterpiece of contrast, because it's such a busy model, yet with the bright colors that you've chosen and the way that you've used multiple bright colors in that Tzeentch theme throughout a piece that is then much more muted, it makes each separate individual stand out against all the others, if you see what I'm saying. The rectum stands out against the ball sack, which stands out against the fat arse cheeks, which stands out against all of the polyps, which stands out against the pipes. Like, you've really horrified a whole generation of people with this.
Things you'd never think you'd say online.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'll try and keep my list a little short here, because there's really too much here for me to discuss, and definitely anybody who wants the gory details should take a look at Michael's blog that he's put together on how he created this, because there are so many things that could be easily missed or not captured in 4 images. And I think we've all sort of commiserated about how we understand how difficult it can be to take a good picture of your butt, and that just picking 4 is not an easy task here. So that being said, there are so many things here, Michael, that are kind of both hilarious and just extremely quality and genius in equal measure. And a few of those that I will call attention to: the fact that the back feet are elevated, and you can imagine him kind of dangling while he's shooting. The fact that the head is chained to the ass shackle that would make some really painful recoil. There's just so many things. And another, the little leaky lube puddle, enjoyed that. Something that I also thought of. And the book that you've done, also hilarious details that everybody should go take a peek at in Michael's blog, because it's a true gem that this little guy is reading an instruction manual next to this vile creation. So just really impressive work all around, and definitely, anybody should go take a look, and it's a true work of both, traditional sculpting, 3D digital sculpting, and kit bashing in fairly equal parts, and that makes it really the true spirit of the Artisans competition, in my opinion.
Thank you.
I don't think I can add more than that. Yeah, absolutely brilliant effort there, Michael. Thank you so much for adding this to the Chaos Dwarf canon, as it were. This is now going to be in the forum for future generations to see, and that both horrifies me and warms my heart in equal measure. Outstanding.
Me a joy, with a lot of joy.
Okay, let's move away from the hypnotizing arsehole of Michael's work, and on to number 6. Now, number 6, I believe, is Betsida is how I decided a little while ago we say his name, and he hasn't corrected me since. So if you're listening, you need me to say your name differently. Betsida is how we're saying it for now. Number 6 was created by Betsida, and this is a Chaos Dwarfified Halfling Hot Pot launcher, isn't it? And I think I see Chublings being used in this as well, which is leading me to think: is this that these are Chaos Halflings, or is this that these are being used as Chaos Dwarfs on a smaller scale? I don't actually know kind of what direction you were going on there, but it's a very, very cool and fun take. I mean, the Halfling Hot Pot launcher has always been a favourite among Warhammer fans. It's fun and funny, and it's got the early spirit of the game baked into it. It really, really has. And the fact that you've even gone to the details of adding tiny little tusks to the Halfling operators there, outstanding effort. What do we make of this one, guys?
The first thing that shot through my head when I saw this is, I want this in my army, but do I want to make this, a modern version with like Lost Kingdom dwarfs and something that would fit thematically a bit better, and B, that I just don't even care if I'd make it newer. I just want this exact model. So if you're selling, I might be interested in buying. I really like it. It's a beautiful made piece. I mean, as you said, everybody loves the hot pot, but the way it's presented here is just a very funny and unique take on it. I love it.
Was this from the old Dogs of War era of miniatures?
So the Halfling Hot Pot is actually a vintage miniature that goes back before the kind of army book Dogs of War. Because Regiments of Renown have been around for a lot longer than the Dogs of War army book. And the Hobgoblin Hot Pot goes back to that period. My understanding from something that Abetsadar posted elsewhere is that the intention is that you do read the Chublings as Chaos Halflings, because this is, by my understanding, intended to be a Chaos Halfling Hot Pot launcher, which I think is just such a fun and cool idea, and such an underexplored part of the lore, and also a great use for Chublings. So yeah, I agree. I think it's oozing with that kind of vintage Warhammer charm.
Very interesting.
Chaos
This might
Halflings.
be the onset of Chublings really emerging onto the 28mm scene in full force, and we've seen them in some past contests with who created the stone golem creation a while back. Geez, that might have been a Zanko build. Could be wrong though. Either way, Chublings and 28mm gonna need some rebranding on the Admiralty Minis website, because I think it works really well, and I actually enjoyed that interpretation more. I think
it's very cool. It's very, very cool. I mean, just we've often talked about how just a phrase Chaos Dwarf, those two words put together contain so much information in 2 words. What does Chaos Halfling mean? That's just a whole that's a whole different area to try to get your head around. What is a Chaos Halfling? Only Lord knows.
Not exactly the most orderly fantasy creatures to begin with.
Yeah, I suppose they always were chaotic with a small c, weren't they? So yeah, this is a really, really cool entry. Very, very, very unique. I have absolutely no idea what it is they're cooking out. I can only imagine it's some kind of ridiculously hot chili con carne or something like that. I imagine that's the kind of thing Chaos Dwarfs would eat, that they're then launching at their enemies. So yeah, Betsida, outstanding work. Thank you so much for entering that. Very cool. Number 7 now, guys. We have an entrance from Little Joe, who got tied bronze place in this competition. I think Little Joe is a recent joiner from the 9th Age forums. I think I might be talking absolute rubbish there, but I'm pretty sure he's pretty active there. Now, what he has created here is something so cool, so unique, something that I hadn't even really thought about. But it's a tiny floating castle. It's a tiny floating castle over a lake of lava with a great big kind of clockwork mortar on one of the turrets, and it's got these big cannonballs that look like they could then drop down into it, and it can fire the next one.
Those elements are from the miniature that this is the Scotia Grendel Dwarf Gun Tower.
Outstanding. Does it normally come with the rock and stuff, or has that kind of been added later?
No, so what he's done is, with the cannonballs and the mortar and the turning circle and the towers, all of that is in the original miniature, and I think the Iron Gate as well. Everything that it is sitting on top of is his own work.
Very cool. So he's taken a piece of scenery, I suppose, really, and he's turned it into an actual active moving thing by a bit of imagination, a bit of kind of high fantasy ideas coming in there, of something that can now float along this lake of lava. It's very cool. Lovely little touch as well is the little anchor on the side. Have you guys seen that?
Yeah, that anchor, and then also the Chaos Dwarf kind of armored face. I think those are the bits that really sell it for me, because the artistic achievement of the floating fortress is by itself the most arresting thing. And I think probably the technical achievement, especially given this is the Artisans contest, is what a lot of people were voting for. I think the way that he's hashutified it by putting that really evocative face, I don't know where he got that from, but I'm imagining he's made it himself. And the anchor is another little motif that just adds bags of style to this.
Yeah, another thing he's done as well is the kind of little pole that's sticking out of the lava to show that it's floating, sort of thing. This, I suppose you call it a flying stand. It's very much hidden in the design of the miniature. It just looks like another beam of metal or rock or something that's kind of poking out of that lava field. And where it's not going directly up in the middle of the model, it doesn't read straight away as that obvious, here's a flying model, here's the flying stand underneath it. It's done in a much more subtle way. And if you actually view the model from the front, I think it is in the first picture with the kind of Chaos Dwarf face on it in the front, you don't even notice the flying stand there. It just looks like it's floating because it's slightly lower there. And I think there's quite a technical achievement in that as well.
The best part about what you're saying about the pole sticking out is if you look at the lava on the base, it's actually like forming little waves where the tube is dragging in the lava. That sells their whole. It's just a piece of the castle dragging through the lava. It's pretty well done. It's pretty smart.
Yeah, really, really well executed.
Have you guys ever played Super Mario 64 on the Nintendo 64?
It's a long time ago, yeah.
This really made me want to play Super Mario 64. You know, with the weird cannons and the dropping cannonballs and stuff like that. I really like the well, to me it was a reference.
Very good point. I haven't thought about that. I know what you mean, though. It definitely does have that sort of feel, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, if you paint it a bit more comically like Super Mario, I could sell it as being Super Mario themed.
Yeah.
That being said, I don't really have a whole lot to add next to what you guys said. I really love the piece, and knowing that the top part is a kit does not really make it any less more impressive, because the way he did the cloud, and as you said, the way he made it float, and the Hasut skull on the front, it's really nicely done. And also the painting of the base is such a huge contrast to the actual castle and the floating cloud. It's nicely done. It's a really beautiful piece.
Yeah, I completely agreed. And I mean, yeah, not much else to add here either. I do believe that face on the front is DIY sculpted. And I also like the little thing on the front and top of the forehead almost looks like a little anvil if I look at it rightly. But yeah, I mean, I think Oxy said it, that view where, you know, you're kind of looking down it and you can't really tell that that beam is what's holding it up. I think that, yeah, really sells the floating look and the view from the top down, actually, where, you know, even though the focus of that picture is mostly you know, the kit part of the model, it still has that like very much sense of height as you're looking at the base below it. So yeah, and I completely agree. This one of my favorite ways to have a flying model represented in terms of, you know, having something that's integral to the scenery be what's cleverly holding the thing aloft. I think that's just such a strong point to this miniature. And yeah, of course, I'm a sucker for the anchor as well. So
Of course. Yeah, and it's quite a high fantasy concept. I mean, somebody could say that's quite an Age of Sigmar-y sort of thing to have a big old flying castle shooting cannonballs at you. But it doesn't look like that. It looks to me like a lot of that proper old school artwork. It looks like the kind of stuff that you would have seen in that kind of Realm of Chaos era where, you know, you go to the Northern Waste and things stop making sense. And it looks old world, and yet it's still executing very well on a high fantasy theme. It's very cool. Very cool. Little Joe, well done, mate. We were all extremely impressed with this. Really, really strong, really fun entry. Right, next one we have is from Uther the Unhinged. Now, Uther has a very, very distinctive style. I believe he makes a lot of his Chaos Dwarfs through kind of Orc and Goblin kit bashes, and they have a very, very distinctive look. You can tell his style straight away. And he is another one who has really embraced the anarchic side of Chaos Dwarfs, because the two machines that we have here are absolutely bonkers. And that's meant as a compliment. They're really, really cool. I believe they're both old Mark 1 rhinos from Warhammer 40,000 that have been Chaos Dwarfified through the addition of giant funnels, gribbly kind of tentacles and stuff growing out of them. All kinds of crazy things going on around them. And just to kind of punctuate the anarchy even further, they're then flanked by a group of Chaos Dwarfs with high-tech gear whose big hats have been turned into kind of like giant gyrocopter sort of contraptions, allowing them to fly around the battlefield. There's so much to talk about on this one, guys. Who feels brave enough to start?
I'll shoot. I mean, one of my favorite things I think it's mostly on the blue model with all of the blue tentacles. The armor panels that he's added that are being pried off by the tentacles. That just I love that feature of it. Gives you a sense of what's going on inside of it, which I guess we just have to imagine. But I love that detail. Also, lots of Tyranid bits, so gotta love that. And then it's got like a face on the side of the upright stack, and that it just makes that whole thing just scream chaos. And just I think that one is my favorite of the two, although the greener kind of mushroom lily pad with maggots one is a whole different beast.
I mean, if I were pressed to say something bad about these, is that it's just so much to look at in two models in 4 pictures. It's great. I mean, I agree with everything you guys said, and I was really happy when I saw the making of these little dudes, because that showed so much more detail and glorious gnarliness that I was really happy to see that. I love the flying dudes, really funny, made me laugh. And I also like the use of the blue and the green colors, contrasting the brass and the metal pipes and metal plates and stuff like that. So yeah, I agree. It's chaotic. It's a lot, and it's how we like it, I suppose.
Yeah, the flying guys in particular, for me, they're a bit like Caradron overlords eat your heart out, right? Because so many people would go the easy route of saying, well, I'll take a Caradron overlord and I'll chaos him up a bit. What Uth has done here is he's said, fuck that into the bin. I'm going to make my own. They're going to look nothing like it. They're going to be scratch built, and they're going to look atmospheric as hell. And I think they really give also a sense of sort of levels to this, because he's got these two, they're built on Rhino chassis, right? He's got these two big chimneys coming out of them that give the models this tremendous towery height, which is a great Chaos Dwarf motif because big towers have been with us since the 80s. But then to add these little flying dudes to them, it just makes them seem like they are absolutely everywhere, because the models, they then live in this vertical dimension that adds to the chaos, with the tentacles surging upwards out in front and all this kind of stuff. You really feel like you couldn't be anywhere near these machines without being in mortal danger, which is a great thing to get from a siege engine.
That's probably why the other guys are flying.
Yeah.
Just gonna say that, and they have remote controls, and they're not piloting those tanks from the inside for a reason.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to be anywhere near that, friend or foe. I don't think that tank knows friend or foe as even concepts. Yeah, anything near that is going to get pulled into it and consumed. Really, really cool stuff. So yeah, Uther, outstanding work as always. I think I said to you in the forum the other day, your work, it has a really distinctive voice, as it were. It has a really distinctive feel, distinctive look. When you see your work, you know it's yours. And this is like that again, where straight away you can almost play the game. Once you've been part of Chaos Dwarfs online long enough, you can play the game of all the entrants come out and guessing whose is whose. And I knew this was your one straight away. And that's meant very much as a compliment, mate, because it's a distinctive and unique take on Chaos Dwarfs, which is entirely your own. It's very, very cool. All right, nice one. Next one we were going to be having a look at was by William. William. I'm going to call him William for now. He has entered a kind of partly scratch built, I think, and partly kit bashed and converted modern take on the 1980s Chaos Dwarfs Whirlwinds and Tenderizers. So for those that aren't aware of that earlier range, there were Boar Centaurs, a bit like Bull Centaurs but half boar, who would push along these kind of war engines. One had big metal fists and stuff that slammed the enemy. The other one had kind of spinning blades. And this is almost like an additional one that you could add to that to turn that into a trio. One that has these great big spike kind of drill things that would then drill into an enemy line. He's grayed out the pusher of the War Machine, which I think is probably one of Adam Taylor's Boar Centaurs. So he's probably grayed that out just so that he didn't make that bit. He's made the War Engine instead. It's a very, very cool and kind of modern take on that very old concept. I think he's used the carriage of maybe like an Empire or a Dwarf cannon there to be the kind of basis of it. But I think the actual weapon in the top is all his own work. Anyone got any better ideas than me? I'm not sure.
I have no idea where the parts come from, but at first I was like, I don't understand what's going on. I was a bit distracted by the grayed out Boar Centaur, and I was actually spending quite a lot of time trying to decide if he was either a genius with making ethereal models or just use Photoshop to blur it out. Because the first 1, 2, 3, 4 pictures or something, the sideway pictures, they seem photoshopped, but if you look at the last one, the one from the top, for me it looks like it's a cloudy model. So I was really like, is he just a genius? But back to the thing he did enter, I think it's a really clever little machine, and it took me a while to appreciate the little intricacies and the details in it, and the fact that it's actually, well, it would probably function as it was designed. It looks functional without magic or whatever, just mechanical. I really wish this was in color, because I think that would have made the model stand out a bit more, and yeah, it would have made it stand out more. There's not much more to say to that, but still, it's really clever. And one thing the grayscale does is it does make you look at all the details a bit more without having all the color information to aid your focal points. But yeah, I'm really interested if he made it himself and what parts he sourced, because some of these bits are really nicely made. Well, most of them are really nicely made, but some of them are exquisitely made.
And it's a reminder, isn't it, that the Artisans competition is not a painting competition. It's a competition of imagination and creativity. So the fact that this is grayed out, the fact that this isn't showing us a paint job, doesn't matter in this competition at all. It's about the thought and intent, and then the execution of creating this thing. And you saying there that it's functional, I would say that's something that this model possibly has that the 1980s ones don't, right? Don't get me wrong, I bloody love a Whirlwind, I bloody love a Tenderizer. I think in all their 80s goofiness, they're some of the coolest things ever. But I don't imagine it'd actually work. If you was to take that onto a battlefield, I don't think it would actually do an awful lot. It's probably more likely to fly apart or something. Whereas this thing looks like it would actually do something on a battlefield. It looks like it would actually be quite a dangerous thing. If you've got an enemy shield wall and this thing is pushed into that shield wall, it might break that line. Do you know what I mean?
I would love to know if my hunch, which is that he used real bolts, you know the bit that I'm talking about, for the rear ends of each of the spikes. I just wonder if those are actual screws. And then what he's done is he's built on top of them and he's wrapped, a green stuff cord around them and stuff like that. And I think it gives it a really distinctive look. I do think that's an old Warhammer Fantasy Battle era artillery chassis that he's used. It's not the organ gun chassis, because I was just checking. The Hellblaster volley gun, sorry, that's the last one that's sold. So if it is, then it's a more vintage cannon chassis. I'm not sure which one. But I would love to hear more from him and maybe see a work in progress blog for him to tell us a little bit about what this was and how he created it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, certainly. I first read it as a Death Shrieker on like a 30-second look, just scrolling through the entries on my phone. But
I did the same.
When I pulled this up, and then what really sells the functionality to me is the different compressions of the springs, and I think that's a really good touch to bring this into. Yeah, this thing would definitely just be putting these spears through a wall or a barricade or something, and I think those look sculpted on the front, but yeah, I'd be curious to, like you said, to see if that was some kind of real screw with some tubing or something around it.
Yeah, very cool and very unique take on an older concept there. And there's also this doesn't look out of place in a more technologically advanced Chaos Dwarf army. So a lot of us find our armies going down one or two routes where you're kind of going old Realm of Chaos stuff, which is a bit more wacky and demony and low tech, or you go down the kind of big hat / Legion of Asgore era, which has a bit more of a technological focus to it, especially by the time you get to Asgore. Whereas this kind of lives on both sides of that camp. I think this doesn't look out of place in Legion of Asgore army. It's a big, heavy piece of machinery, and it doesn't look out of place in a kind of a Realm of Chaos army either. I think it works in both, which is very, very cool take on an older concept there. So next up we have this is Reaver's one actually, and I believe this one scored. I know for a fact this one scored gold place, mate. So congratulations for that. We have Reaver's take on the Arsecannons, and Reaver's gone completely Reaver on this by making it super high tech and super nautical all at the same time. So we have this great big cannon. Attached to some kind of horrible demonic octopus squid sort of creature, which I imagine has been inserted in it somehow, and the cannon is coming out of the rear of him, and you've kind of put this on like a giant mechanical platform, and as always, Reaver, the level of detail on this is just next level. It really, really is. And I make the mistake of looking at something like this and thinking, oh, he's kit bashed a few different things here. And then I look at your work in progress pictures and I realise that you have sourced so much stuff and created so much stuff from raw materials to create this. So yeah, it's a really, really exciting and really, really interesting piece.
Thanks, man. Yeah, definitely. It was a long build, but I've had two things sitting for far too long in a box without a use. One being the servo hauler crane from Adeptus Mechanicus, and the Venom Crawler, I believe, from Chaos Space Marines. So the two main components. And that I quite legitimately only purchased for the legs, which hopefully will be fully formulated in a Kadai Destroyer eventually. But I've had those two things lurking around, and other than taking a Dremel tool to a Forge World Dreadquake mortar in a very stressful manner, those are pretty much the main components. And then everything else is trash and more trash, and then some sculpting. Yeah.
I mean, you say some sculpting, but that's a hell of a lot of sculpting you did there.
Hell of a lot of time. Not actually that much green stuff. Suction cups, just kind of hours of putting suction cups on tentacles. But
I mean, there's a whole list of stuff that I liked about this build, and the first thing I loved, and actually the one that made me pretty much instantly make this my favorite top one model of the whole competition, is the face of the octopus. It's just, I really hoped and prayed that it was hand sculpted, and it is, so that really sold it to me. I like the eye cup, with the frame on top. It's a really nice detail, and it really looks like it's in a in a lot of pain. Um, Another thing I like is that the tentacles are gripping everything around it. That's, if you ever saw somebody hold an octopus or help one yourself, um, that's what they actually do. So that's really, really cleverly done. Um, I really like the use of the kits, and I do made the mistake that Jack said that he made, thinking this is mostly scrap or kit bash, but it took me about say 10 seconds of staring to see that you did a whole lot of work on this. Um, and one of my favorite elements that I noticed really later on, after my third or fourth glance, were the mini tentacles coming out of the ass cannon. Well, the cannon itself. Didn't notice that at once, but really liked it. And yeah, it screamed Reaver. I mean, I didn't really have any doubt who you guys' sculpts were. So this one was pretty obvious. And again, for this one, I'm really grateful that you made a very extensive blog on how you made it, because there's so much detail that isn't visible in the 4 pictures you sent in. Yeah, I love it. And it's a deserved first win. Absolutely.
Agreed.
I think for me, as someone who knows that he could never achieve what you guys have achieved, when I look at this one, what I feel that makes it stand out even from the other podium stuff is that the other ones feel like they are kind of a miniature. This feels more like a diorama in the sense of motion that it has, right? Because the tentacles are moving, because the whip stands out visually against everything else as kind of being in flight, because of the way that the beast itself is clearly mid-turn. So even the way that the gun itself is not angled on any of the straight lines of the base, right? All of these things conspire to create this sense of this horrific beast moving, and you feel like you can understand the uneven weight of it based on where everything is and how it's being angled and how it's being moved. And once again, as with Michael's, you get the sense that this is something that is just an absolute nightmare to be in the presence of. It's something that the Chaos Dwarfs are barely in control of. In the way that, by contrast, with Michael's, you feel like this is a horrific animal that has been completely subjugated. This one, it feels touch and go. You know what I mean? It feels like being assigned to be the crew on this one is a bad day for you.
I like the way you put that.
Well, depending on who you believe on the forum, it's a good day.
Yeah, absolutely. Clear first place, I think it's fair to say.
I like what you said there in terms of like barely being in control, because that's definitely what I was shooting for. And one of the first ideas that I had was to have one of the tentacles be trying to do something to the machine, and that was kind of built a lot of the like locating the platform and everything just based on the fact that I wanted one tentacle to be reaching out for levers or something, and in some manner to be trying to end its pain. That was one of the things that I kind of built around from the beginning. Didn't have too many things that I had written down, but that was one of them, and that kind of wanted. And I think the fourth picture was kind of what I was shooting for in my mind in terms of the diorama between the beast trying to turn something off with one of the crew members not noticing it, but the whip guy noticing it and going to be whipping him in the very imminent future.
For me, I think this is on the level of like a professional Forge World centerpiece, like the Drazhoath Taurus. You know, the one that's like just landing on the ground and it's mid motion.
Yeah.
And I think as an achievement, I think it exceeds quite a lot of miniatures that are on general release. Right. So if you look at Garda's Steel Soul is supposed to be like impacting the ground in like a Marvel hero pose. He's got all of these little hammers floating up behind him that are supposed to imply motion. That is a professionally sold GW miniature that does not imply movement as successfully as this has done.
All in all, very impressive, Reaver. Well done, mate.
Thanks,
Really
guys.
beautiful model. Right, so moving on from Reaver's Arse Kraken onto number 11, which is created by Freak Show. So if you'll just open up number 11, gents. So what Freak Show has created is a giant sort of a steam engine sort of creation. It's got a bit of a Stephenson's rocket sort of look to it, with an utterly massive gun barrel attached to the front of it. And then he's got a whole crew of Chaos Dwarf engineers working at the back of it there. Another model was, tipping its hat to that sort of Legion of Asgore idea of the kind of the giant steam trains all linked together with different weapons on them. We've talked an awful lot about industrial warfare being a big motif for Chaos Dwarfs, and this really taps into that. Now, I can't tell quite which parts are creations of his own and quite which parts have come from other kits, because I'm not particularly familiar with a lot of the parts being used here. Maybe you guys can shed some light on some of this.
Yeah, this is a tough one. I mean, I'm thinking there's some of the Adeptus Mechanicus terrain in here could be mixed up in that, but that, it looks like he's done something that, I'd find myself doing in terms of taking Adeptus Mechanicus and slapping some symbols of Hashut on it, and then it works nicely. I mean, some form of Lost Kingdom crew to take the low-hanging fruit. Other than that, yeah, I'm not fully sure on a lot of these parts. Definitely a lot of interesting sourcing for sure.
Sorry, I was trying to look up the gun barrel, but I can't find it. I like this a lot. It's really striking with the tarnished metal and the brass trimmings on it. And as you said, it's quite modern, or it looks quite modern. The crew in the back looks, well, it pulls the eye. It's really nicely focal point. And I actually really like this model. It's just, I can imagine this being used in a Chaos Dwarf army and being absolutely terrifying. Would also be a nice proxy for a steam cannon.
Yeah.
I don't recognize any of it, so if he would say he made everything from scratch, I just completely believe him. Yeah, it's a nice model, and I voted for him, so it's a good win. I think I voted for him. Did I vote
It's
for
always
him?
hard to remember. I'm like that as well. I forget who I did and didn't vote for because
Well,
you spend so long agonising over it, don't you?
I mean, I made a subset of 6 or 7 models that I felt deserved to win, and then I started eliminating. So I can say for sure he was in the top 6, which is pretty good already. I don't know if he made the top 3. I completely forgot, but I think he did.
Yeah.
He should have if he didn't. So if you didn't, if you lost the win because of my vote, I'm sorry.
It's so hard though, isn't it, mate? The quality is so high. When it comes to the voting, you want to have 10, 15 different votes you can use, and it just doesn't work like that. If this is a piece of terrain that's been repurposed here, it's entirely an imaginative concept that may be like some kind of like smokestack or something that's being used as a gun barrel there, potentially from, like, as you say, some AdMech or some from Under Train or something there. It's very cool.
I think I'm surprised that we don't see this kind of stuff more often. I think when you think about the number of tanks that are available for people to buy, and how stylish the steam tank is and how central to GW's franchise that has been as a concept. I'm really surprised that we don't see more people making Chaos Dwarf steam tanks. And I think this is exactly the kind of thing that you see it immediately, it's evocative, and it marks itself apart from the Caradron aesthetic, from the Empire aesthetic, from the 40k aesthetic, even though it draws, many of those spikes around the frames, for instance, I think are pieces from the 40k Rhino or from 40k Chaos kits in general. But then this is just a really wonderfully executed Iron Demon style machine that you would expect to see so many of. But when you do it to this kind of quality and standard, you almost wish that you could buy this as a kit, which I think we've said a couple of times now. But I think this is one of the ones where I could really believe that this would be on general release.
So at about the same time as Reaver found it, I realized this is part of the Kill Team terrain kit. And as Jack correctly guessed, it's part of a smokestack, basically. It's standing upright with the small narrow cannon part upright. It's from the Mechanicum set, isn't it, Reaver?
Yeah, that's right. The word jarble that we were looking for is Sector Mechanicus Galvanic Magnavent.
Why couldn't I remember that?
It just rolls off the tongue.
But still, knowing that it's a Kill Team set, it doesn't diminish any of the work you did in making
No, not at all.
No, quite the opposite.
It's
Yeah,
really
exactly the opposite. It makes you view it with, you think you've seen something, you've seen a potential in a completely unrelated kit. So, Warhammer 40k / Kill Team, different system. Terrain, not a weapon. Smokestack, not a gun. He's seen the potential in another kit here and he's repurposed it. And also, not a cheap kit. You know what I mean? He's invested some money in doing this. This hasn't been something that's been done on a whim here. He's used an expensive bit of terrain here to create. And it's amazing. This does just fit in with the Legion of Asgore army. That doesn't look out of place next to a Skullcracker engine or one of your big cannons or something at all, does it?
Absolutely.
No, he's made it work really nicely, and then I will add to that it's not just like a drop in place thing. He's done quite a bit of work to that end. I cannot confirm that the entirety of the barrel is even from that kit. I don't think it is. I think it's really, well, at minimum, I can say that the tip looks to be from that, but there's still a pile of work that's been done to it.
Yeah. All those Hachette runes as well been hand sculpted, I assume.
Yeah, must be.
Yeah, because I'm looking now at the Mechanicus kit, and there are little half skull sort of Adeptus Mechanicus symbols on there, which I think he has then gone over with some green stuff or some milliput or something, and then created little Hachette V's, the little rune of Hachette there. Do you know, the more I was impressed by this when I first saw it anyway, but the deeper we've gone on this one for each show, the more impressed I've actually become on it. It's like the more I look at it, the more questions it raised about how you did it and why you did it and where you got the bits from and stuff. So yeah, outstanding work, mate. It's exactly what Artisan's all about. That entry really, really is. Absolutely. All right, so let's move on to number 12, which was created by user High on Heresy. So High on Heresy has created a really, really interesting cannon here. A couple of people even described it as the kind of the inverse Arseccannon. You know, you got like something that's demonic and it almost looks like it's semi-alive or semi-sentient, but the cannon ball is going in the bum, as it were, and being launched out of the mouth, as it were. And this is a great big kind of like, I can't quite tell if it's like a living demon or if it's like a statue made to look like a demon. It's hard to tell. And the thing that he's done, which he's done quite a few times in his painting, which is always really impressive, is he's done this really cold blue glowing object source lighting in his paint job as well here. And I think at least one of the crewmen looks like a cyborg miniatures. Hard to tell.
Yeah, absolutely. The guy in the front. Yep.
Cyborg's got quite a distinctive look. You can normally tell them, can't you? But yeah, this was a really, really unique take on, well, siege artillery for Chaos Dwarfs, but also a unique take on the Arsecannon as a concept as well.
Well, I, for one, absolutely hope that he intended it to look like a living demon, because to me it does. And it instantly, registered as one of his because of the signature blue. I really like the if you look at the top right picture, the feet or the foot, and the way that the butt cheek is well, sculpted. It's really funny and nicely made piece. Also, a lot of detail, as with most of these, where you just keep on looking at it and you keep on seeing new stuff. I like this one a lot.
Has he done a work in progress on this on the forum? Because if he has, I've missed it. So I'd love to see how it was created.
Same.
Linus, if you're listening, mate, do a work in progress in the forum, please. We would love to, if you haven't already. If you have, could you point in the direction for me? Because I've missed it. We would love to see how this was done, what steps you did to create this. Very interesting.
I think it's really interesting in particular because you get the sense that the way that its limbs have been bound down and the way that they're kind of, it's almost merging all into the ground, right? This is a beast that's been brutalized. It's covered in blood stains. It is, as with some of the other really fantastic things that we've looked at, this really looks like it takes a lot of work to keep this thing going, because it's got these big rippling muscles on the arms, and then everything about its arms and hands is covered in blood. I do think that the relationship between the barrel and the body is one of the most interesting ones that we've seen. And I think that it really deserves that kind of credit for that degree of vision that it took to turn this together. I'd be really interested, to see that whip blog and to find out where the parts came from and how much of this is freehand sculpted, because I know that Lake Tide's capable of doing that. And I'd just be really interested to hear what choices he made along the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Very
I
cool.
I don't know Cyborg stuff well, but I could see that dwarf having a little bit of conversion done to him as well. It looks like he's got a gut plate from one of from some of Cyborg's range. I recognize that, but he very well could have taken one of those Cyborg miniatures and done a fair amount of work to it.
Something I was thinking about as well, Chits, you're just talking about the body of the creature. When you look at the original, I think it was Nick Lund, wasn't it? Arsecannons. I mean, and Chits, you probably know better than us because you're the proud owner of one. It does actually have a body that is much more of a cannon than what later interpretations of it have been. Later interpretations of the Arsecannons have been much more, here's a demon with a cannon coming out of his arse, whereas the original one was very much more, the line between cannon and demon was kind of a bit more merged, and the actual creature's body was kind of like the actual tube of a cannon. And I think Lake Tide has kind of tapped into that a touch here, hasn't he?
Yeah. So the original Arsecannons was very much it almost looks like the demon has grown up around the cannon rather than vice versa, if you see what I'm saying, because the demon's torso is a perfect tube, right? It is a circular spherical tube. It's kind of got fur on top and a face at one end, and then it's got these big muscular limbs that are fastened down. But it itself is a cannon barrel as a torso. And that's what I think Lake Tide has gone back to that sculpt and thought about how he wants to interpret it in this specific way. In a way where I think with some of the other stuff, and we'll come to the last Arsecannons in a couple of entries, but like there are lots of different ways of understanding how you can have firearm that is also someone's arse, if you see what I'm saying. I think we've seen probably every possible example here. And this is the one that cleaves closest to the original concept, I think.
What's funny as well is how serious and academic we have now got about Arsecannons. There was a time on this podcast where someone just mentioned a demon's bum, and we're all giggling like schoolgirls. But now we are sitting here and we're having very in-depth conversations about, the specs, the different types of Arsecannon, the interpretations of the concept.
Well, just to give a little, I know we don't have much time, but like just to give a little personal bit, I didn't know about the Arseccannon until I came to the board. It's the last mini that I found out about. But the other thing to understand is it's by far and away one of the most valuable Warhammer miniatures that's out there on the market, right? Like, it is not the metal Thunderhawk, and it's not, like a giant Titan, but for the size it is, gram for gram, it's one of the most valuable miniatures out there because it wasn't released. And so it's this myth that exists of this range before a range before a range, all of it discontinued throughout recorded time. And as a result, the concept itself is kind of the forbidden secret of the range that is itself a forbidden secret.
Yeah, until I came to the forums a few years back, I wasn't aware of its existence at all either. I think probably the first time I became aware of it was the Chaos Dwarfs Through the Ages section they had in the old forum, which I think has now been ported to the new forum as well, where it had somebody's painted version of that. I'll credit them on screen, and I'll put a picture of their work up there. I can't remember who painted that one, but that was my first. Yeah, so it is. It's not something people know. You don't walk up to your average Games Workshop fan and say, "So, what do you think about Arsecannons?" Because they won't have a clue what you're talking about, will they?
Oh, we're going to change that before this year is out. We are going to change that through our partnership with a certain YouTuber. We are going to make Arsecannons famous, I guarantee.
Oh wow, this is going to be my legacy, isn't it? It's going to be what my child looks up to me one day and says, "What did you do in the world, Dad?" I spread the word of Arsecannons.
We can't stop until we've memed a Regiment of Renowned Hell Cannon that's an ass cannon into Total War Warhammer 3.
If anyone's listening and they're any good at modding on video games, please just help us out, guys. We can't trust the company to do it, but we know someone listening here has the skills, has the time, and has the vision to make this happen. Anyway, let us move on because we have we've got about three more to look at. So, next one is by forum user Twisted Moon. And what we have here is a giant, it's really large, purple steam paddle sort of boat. And it is absolutely full of Chaos Dwarfs, and it's got a great big mortar on the front, and it's a really fantastic concept, because we know that Chaos Dwarfs have access to steam technology and stuff, and how often do we see it kind of applied in this way? It's really, really cool. And I'm recognising as well some very, very niche little models hanging around there. A couple of Adam Taylor sculpts hanging around on board there. But yeah, let's talk about this one, gentlemen. Let's talk about the Steamship.
Very, very well realized, and we've seen, I believe, folks like Chubb come from scratch building 28 millimeter naval ironclads, but this is incredibly well realized and a substantial effort to undergo in a contest deadline. So just props for that. But it's been really, really well built. I mean, anytime you're trying to do things with those kind of curves, it's not going to be necessarily the most fun. He's done a really good job realizing it, and then there's a lot of fun crew aboard, and that really adds to it. Mm-hmm. Kind of brings the whole piece together, and it's also very cool that playable interior. So extra effort there for sure.
Yeah, I was looking at that and I was thinking this almost works well as potentially a piece of scenery if you were doing like an RPG or something that people can move around and interact with, because it's going to be a hard model to use in an average game of Warhammer, isn't it? It's not the kind of thing you're going to be able to just put onto a land battlefield. It has to be a very, very specific sort of scenario where you have a large amount of water where this could be involved. But I could definitely see this being used in a game where you can move from room to room, and the fact that he's made the roofs removable and actually taken the time and energy to actually paint the rooms and stuff as well. Even that chimney stack going all the way down has been completed all the way through, hasn't it?
I mean, technically, it could be a land ship.
Very true. Although I'm looking, well, yeah, I suppose so. I suppose I was just looking at the side of it, where it has the kind of half circle sort of covering, and imagining that a whole wheel, like a whole paddle, would go there, so that some, therefore, I suppose the viewer assumes is submerged in water. But hey, these are Chaos Dwarfs. There's nothing stopping them having some kind of big old tank tracks underneath that cover and rolling this thing into battle, is there?
Look, man, if these can ride fucking sharks through the air into battle above the water, then we can roll a steamboat over flat terrain if we want to. But I do think that he's chosen the fabric that he's placed it on to kind of suggest water. And it would be charming either way, right? Because I think that's the thing that I get from this more than anything is kind of this infectious sense of fun, right? You've got that sort of chimney coming through. You've got the corrugated iron effect on the top. It's kind of a very much sort of zooming in on Man of War in a way that, you know, we never get the chance to do because of how much the scale of 28mm demands of it. And it's really nice to see one take that concept on to execution. This is what I imagine it's like during a game of Man of War, right? Lots of people fussing around on deck, living out their own stories. The fact that roofs are detachable just adds to the charm for me.
That's really fascinating that you've mentioned Man of War, actually, Chits, because I've not really played Man of War much. I had a couple of intro games because a friend of mine owns the starter kit for it, and we once fantasized about having a game of Man of War, and then when you have the boarding action in Man of War, it's a simple dice roll to decide whether a crew's taken over and killed the other crew or whatever. And we spoke about how you could use another system like Warhammer or Age of Sigmar or Warlords of Erewhon or something to resolve those battles. So when the two ships come side by side and one launches an assault on the other one, then turning to the side and having a boat already out like this and getting your models out and actually fighting a little battle over the boat would be so cool.
Ironically, I think more time would be what you'd want to use.
Yeah, that'd be a good system for it, actually, wouldn't it? Everyone acting independently, but using those Warhammer stats. Yeah, that would be a really cool one for that. But yeah, having a piece of kind of, it's a war machine, but using it as a piece of scenery for a system like that would be a lot of fun. It'd be a fun way to resolve those boarding actions. It'd make the game last ages.
But at the same time, with the detachable roof, to me, it almost says like this is a piece for like an RPG campaign. If it's not, you know, a game of more time, right? Like it's a bit small to do something that intricate on, but really, this is a diorama that we're looking at. I think the joy of it, like I say, is that it's just such a fun model because it gives you all these different ideas and all these different angles on stuff, and you just feel like you could spend months getting use out of it on games and creating dioramas and disassembling them in turn.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, to me, it absolutely screamed RPG at the first glance. Not only because in the past I have had missions or entire games taking place on a ship on a river on the Reich. So yeah, I got flashbacks to that mission. Funnily enough. Other than that, I can only really mimic what you guys said. I love that it has a playable interior, and the chimney was really it stands out a lot. I like that. I love the size. It's really it's chunky in a good way. And a shout out to the Adidas, whatever you pronounce it, Adidas logo on the side. I like that.
Oh, it's like a trefoil from Adidas. I know what you mean. Adidas Originals, yeah.
So yeah, I like it. Although also interesting color choice for purple for the ship. It's a nice touch.
Yeah, all in all, a very cool entry. Thank you, Twisted Moon. Moving on now to entry number 14, which was created by Debo, one of our regulars. He's entered an awful lot of our competitions. He's very active on the forum. So yeah, let's have a good look at what Debo has created. How do I start to describe this? Debo has created a steam engine of sorts, a kind of a war machine, which is made out of metal, brass, has big old Hashut runes and other Chaos Dwarf symbols on it. And on the front of it, it has an absolutely enormous Chaos Dwarf / Lamassu kind of head. What a big hat with horns, with a bright ginger beard. It's got big old rocket launchers and stuff on the side of it. And as if that isn't impressive enough, viewers who look at the fourth picture will see that this machine actually expands out and stands up with things clicking out of the side of it to stand up at a kind of like a full height and have all of its armaments on show, like some kind of twisted Chaos Dwarf transformer. It is utterly crazy in all the best ways possible. It taps into all of my childhood Transformers and Power Rangers experiences, and of course, it's very, very much Chaos Dwarf themed. How do we feel about this one, guys?
Well, as with a lot of his work, it's very 1994, which is a good thing. And well, where do I start? There's a lot to look at. It's really interesting, and the choice of putting the Lamassu Taurus head on the front is interesting, but it's very well. It's a good touch. I like the focal point of that. And again, as with some of the models, it took me a while to really understand what I was looking at, and to understand that it was, transformer like collapsible. I mean, I saw there was something different, but it took me a while to understand what he did. I like the fact that the wheels he used are what I assume are either Forge World Kit wheels or something similar, or either good copies. I don't know. And yeah, overall, it's a cool piece of work. The golden bull head on the rear, it looks a lot like a 3D printed part I also have on the uh, what's it called, the rocket launcher I printed.
Okay.
So might be he found that and printed it. I recognize it from that anyway. Yeah, I like it. It's a pretty cool and fun piece to look at. Also, I think this would be pretty terrifying if it was coming at you on a field of war.
Oh god, yeah.
Really like what he's done with the runes on all the sides. I think that's a really nice touch. Yeah, they're really crisp, well made. Definitely can appreciate he's gone and sourced some really fun looking runes to bring this thing to life.
Yeah, and I think they are proper, like as in universe, proper lore Chaos Dwarf runes. I seem to remember there's somewhere on our forum somebody's compiled a list of Chaos Dwarf runes, which is always an interesting thing. I'm recognizing a couple of them from that actually. So I think he's done his own work here. He's made it lore friendly.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Do we think has he taken a kind of like a Transformer style toy and kind of Chaos Dwarf?
That was my assumption. Is
Yeah.
that underlying this is a train, like a plastic toy train that has then had work done on it. That work is significant, right? Like, not least the adding of the weapons. I think he's replaced all the wheels, which is probably significant work because they all seem to be different sizes, and yet they're holding it all up the same height. And then, of course, he's added the runes and the bull's head on the back. I don't know how much work he's done with the weapons, but we'd have to once again beg him to do a whip blog and tell us more about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Debo, if you have done a whip blog, I haven't seen it, mate. You might have done it. There's a lot. The forum is so busy right now. So much cool stuff coming out. But there was a time, I was saying to the guys a little while ago, there was a time when I knew that I saw everything that happened on CDO. But now, there's so much material coming through the forum that I do often miss things. So, Debo, if you haven't done a work in progress blog, we'd love to see it. If you have done a work in progress blog, could you just ping it to us or chuck a message out or just remind us, because I'd love to see how this was created.
I mean,
And the last thing I would say is that the color scheme, he's gone straight down the Debo line once again to 1993. He's built this incredibly classic. It looks, color scheme wise, and in the way that he's expressed it, it looks like the box art from the old character kits. He's used kind of, if they sold a Chaos Dwarfs paint starter kit, he has used that whole palette as it was in the original Big Hat range.
Mm.
And I think it pays real dividends because it really brings that giant Lamassu head to life. I'd love to know where that comes from as well and how much work he did on that personally. But I really think that whatever the source of all these different elements and components he's brought it together into this absolutely hilarious and fun looking machine.
I'm recognizing the head actually, as there is a Chaos Dwarf Blood Bowl Minotaur on Thingiverse. I don't know the name of the artist who created it. If I find it and remember, I'll link it on here as we do this. But what I think he's done is he's then gone into some kind of mesh mixer or something, separated out that head from the body, and then just blown it up to an absolute ridiculous scale that I can only imagine took up the vast majority of the printer plate as he printed it. I think that's right.
I mean, if you know the last few hours of the contest before the voting started, he was pretty much live blogging his progress in a last minute ditch to get this all done. So I would assume there's not much room for taking pictures for a weblog, but I really hope he did, because I would love to see where he started that evening and where he ended in the morning, being what we're looking at, and see just actually how much work he pulled off in that one night, because that makes it even more special to know that he did a lot of this work in one night.
Not Michael, I'd completely forgotten that he was doing this proper last minute, wasn't he? That he was really up against it for time, and that he was saying, there's a chance I'm not going to make it, boys. And he was like, I am going to make it. And he was kind of like, yeah, burning the midnight oil to get this done. So
I think he took pictures and entered them in like the 5 last minutes or something.
Really? Well done, Debo.
It was really close anyway.
Yeah. Shows you how serious people take these competitions, doesn't it? That's fantastic. Yeah. Okay, we are going to move on now to the last one actually. The last entrance. Not last in chronologically, but just last in the list of entrances to the competition, which is the Arseccannon that I created. So this is something that I sculpted. Its body is mostly made out of Citadel paint pots, and its arms are made out of coffee stirrers mostly. And its bum cannon is half of a. When you got little kids, they have paracetamol as like a medicine as opposed to a tablet, and it comes when they're babies with a little syringe that you kind of use to administer. And it's one of those little baby syringes for administering medicine. That's what the bum cannon is. And as I said earlier, this is something that I had a slightly different vision for. And then I went and messed up my finger and had to use clay to finish it. So I ended up using fur, because fur is a very straightforward thing to sculpt, and I went for the easy option at the end. Yeah, this is my Arseccannon.
Where do we start? It's probably the most. I can't believe I'm saying this, but it's probably the most pretty sphincter of the competition. So that's a nice made sphincter. Congrats on that. I like the weathering on the cannon. That's really spot on, and I like the. That's the first time I see it actually. I like the fact that the green slimy stuff also leaked onto the sphincter. That's a nice touch. That's the first. But the thing that sold this to me is absolutely the face, the head, the single horn on top, and the fact that he has one eye, no front teeth, or top teeth, upper teeth, whatever. This made me laugh way more than I want to admit. It's
every
really
time
cool.
you look at it, and
Actually,
and
yeah, every time.
I would proposition that when you show this, you can show a sequence of images in the YouTube video, going lower left, and then the upper right with the barrel, and then the whole image with the face in the top left, and then the bottom right, because that is the meme sequence that just absolutely makes this thing just incredible comedy gold. You just okay, you're seeing a demon. Yeah, clearly there's an ass cannon, and then you just see the face, and then you get the close up on the face zoomed in, and that sequence there is just the funniest thing in this competition. And the curled knuckles on the one hand is probably my favorite side detail. Just
No, it isn't.
hold on to it.
I know what your favorite side detail is, Reaver, because you pointed these out to me. It's the fact that it's had its teeth pulled.
That's it. Yep, that's true. I wasn't the first to point it out, though. I think
Honestly, Oxy, the level of detail you put into telling a story, right? This has classic painting competition, or well, it's sculpting competition, but like classic painting competition narrative, right? In that just by looking at the details, and this has been true in all three of your entries, you learn something about how this miniature ended up in the pose that we found it in today. In this instance, this is, of the three of your entries, this is the demon which is by far the least threatening to the Chaos Dwarfs around it, right?
Oh, he's subjugated, isn't he?
Literally almost toothless, clearly experiencing one of the worst days of his life. And, you know, it doesn't look like it's going to finish anytime soon, right? And I think the toothlessness, you know, the whole pose, and like you say, Reaver, the curled knuckles, like all of it provides this tremendous like emotional depth to this senseless piece of military hardware that is just bizarre. Like, we shouldn't be talking about the emotional depth of an Arsecannon sculpt, and yet you've done that classic thing that everyone on the forum loves so much, where you've taken an absurd concept, you've thought it through, and realized that it has a story to tell. I think that's one of the reasons why it so comfortably gets onto the podium, because it's so evocative the minute you see it. And the idea that the fur was some kind of compromise doesn't even sit right with me, because it looks so natural. You know what I mean? It looks so intentional that I can't imagine what you would have done instead of fur.
Yeah, do you know what? And the fur is one of those things that it was created because of a necessity, and then I ended up leaning into it and changing the design slightly because of it. But I am happy that I did. I think the original thing I was going to do was going to be a lot more exposed skin and musculature on the creature itself. And there potentially would have been more that could have gone wrong there in terms of my actual sculpting ability. But actually, and I think one of you guys pointed out that the original Arseccannon had the fur and that as well. So yeah, it works in the end. I think I wouldn't go so far as to say I'm proud of what I've created, because it's it's ridiculous.
To be fair,
But in the context of this competition, I'm proud of what I've created. Yeah.
I mean, you said you were afraid to show it to your kid, but in my eyes, this is the most kid-friendly ass cannon of the three or four.
Yeah.
And it fits well with your northern dwarves as well, having
Absolutely.
they created a furry creature or captured a furry creature. That makes sense to me, as opposed to something that would be more bare. It makes sense that they would find something that looks like this, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah. And since I didn't have any snow basing stuff when I took these photographs, but I've since added the snow base to it, so that it does fit that army a lot better now than it did at completion. At the time, I'd run out of snow stuff and had to enter it. The two biggest influences on his whole face and design and stuff was I don't know if any of you guys are Ray Harryhausen fans, but one of the Sinbad films, he finds this great big troglodyte creature, which is like a giant sort of ape thing with a big horn in the middle of its head. That was part of it. And then the other one was Ludo from Labyrinth. The kind of big, sad bear monster. And I always thought that Jim Henson creature has a very, very sad face, and I wanted sad in this. So he doesn't look like Ludo, but that was like a real inspiration for this.
I mean, if I had to describe this thing in one word, it would be sad. I mean,
Yeah.
or funny. I can't decide. Either way.
Yeah,
Also-
sadness is what I was going for, definitely.
Yeah, you succeeded a lot in funny too.
yeah. Sadness for the sake of comedy, to laugh at this creature's anguish.
I definitely get a Cyclops Gruffalo vibe from it with the fur.
Oh my god, shits! I just took my daughter the day before yesterday to the Gruffalo Trail in the wood in Essex.
Nice.
If I'd have come across this, mate, I would have gone straight home.
I also think there's something to the fact that this is almost like a demon just on its worst day, that has been subjugated, and that is something that we don't often get to see, right? We don't often get to empathize with or experience pathos with demons, and in this instance you can just tell that this guy is having one of the worst days of his life.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. Yeah, it was fun to produce and a fun competition to enter. And as I think I mentioned in the forum already, I managed to snag a bronze place with this, which means I've both done very well in the competition and yet somehow also lost the Artisans competition to my colleagues Reaver and Michael there.
Let's be clear. The guy who never enters anything and has no talent is always taking fourth place, right? So you can wear your bronze medal with the pride of a minor Olympic athlete, because it's still a massive achievement, especially in the context of the Artisans. The stuff that you guys did won on its own merits, right? Like, that meme was just a meme between us. I think people on the forum were aware of it, but in practice, you were not competing against the other bums. You were all podiumed against almost all of the other hardware that people put out there. And I think that's a testament to why everyone likes to hear you guys in particular talking about what they've made, right? Because you're clearly a group of astonishingly skilled people. And I still don't understand why you hang out with me.
I think also Michael said it earlier, but there was definitely no shortage of people that may not be very amenable to the concept of the ass cannon, and from Admiral's kind of challenge during, I guess, Michael's sculpting process there. Definitely surprised we weren't dumped on by all the other entries.
I mean, it's kind of sad and really good that we all placed in the top 3, because if neither of us finished in top 3, we wouldn't have real closure on this, because we do not know who went up above the other one. But on the other hand, for people who are easily disgusted by all the nasty stuff we see coming by on the Discord, off topic and stuff, you all did vote on the stuff we made that is pretty nasty and fits off topic pretty much wholeheartedly. So I'd have a good hard look in the mirror the next time you comment on someone.
Yeah, I think to be fair, there is a huge recognition for what are clearly the most ambitious acts of sculpture. To look at the other entries, in most cases, you're looking at kit bashers, right? The vast majority. And the thing that made Little Joe, and Little Joe deserves his day in the sun and his respect for his podium finish as well. The thing that made Little Joe something that I think people voted for is the technical achievement of making the fortress appear to float, right?
Yeah.
And only using one angled strut. This is a very high intellect, high ability voting population that you're dealing with. Do you know what I mean? And when things like Uther's achievement in the things that he did doesn't necessarily podium, it's not to say that this stuff isn't beating the standards of almost all sculpting competitions. I think that in most cases the Arsecannons took the positions that they took because there was so much green stuff, putty and sculpting work. And it was really obvious to every voter, and I say this as a non-biased one of them, it was really obvious to every voter the gap between the starting materials and the finished product with your stuff that was mainly not kit bashed, stuff that was mainly scratch built, is the thing that commanded the votes. And I think Joe, similarly, people looked at that and thought, bloody hell, could I really do that? How long would it take me? He's made it look effortless. It looks like it's going to stand like that for 1,000 years, even though it's got clear blue space beneath it.
And that's why we keep you around, Chits. You just praise us a lot.
When in
I'm just
doubt, I
kidding.
do words good.
Yeah. No, I mean, to me, this was a really hard vote because you have all these, there's the sub contest of all the Arsecannons, and I really wanted to vote on these exclusively. But on the other hand, that would have been firstly very unfair to the other guys, and secondly, I didn't want to vote on the Arsecannons because I wanted to vote on the Arsecannons. I wanted them to deserve it. So it took me quite a long process to figure out why I wanted to vote on something. And that attests to the amount of work and effort that was put into all these entries. All in all, I want to say good job to everyone who entered, and thank you to everyone who voted. This was a really fun contest.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a bit of a cliche, isn't it, to say, you know what, everyone's a winner and stuff like that. But with a competition like this, everybody has made a massive, massive effort, and everybody needs to be applauded for making that massive effort. No two people have come out with an alike design here. No two people have approached it from the same direction, and no two people have phoned it in either. Everyone who has entered here has they've not left anything. They've given their all, and that is, as I often say, we are a small forum in the big scale of things, Chaos Dwarfs Online, but we are disproportionately creative, and for the size that we are disproportionately creative. So this is just another example of what the users of this website are able to achieve. So yeah, well done to each and every one of you who entered this competition, guys. It's appreciated and it's inspired us all. You'll probably be seeing copycats of your work popping up all over the forum, because I know we've already spoke about designs today that we've looked at and we've gone, yeah, I want to use a little bit of that, and yeah, I wish I'd done a bit of that. And these kind of add to the kind of the mythos, the kind of ever growing our own canon of what Chaos Dwarfs are. It's cool, really cool stuff. But that does bring us to the end, gentlemen, of the Artisans competition. Unfortunately, that's all the entrants. We've gone through them all now. So we've just got a couple little messages before we sign off, really, haven't we? The first message is that there's another competition on. There is the Golden Hat competition running right now. The Golden Hat competition, similar to the Artisans competition, but instead of being kind of kit bash or sculpting focused, it's more painting focused. There is nothing stopping you from sculpting. There is nothing stopping you from kit bashing. It just means that the focus of the competition leans a little bit more heavily towards your painting. And the theme this time, very clever, I think, from Admiral, to coincide with the Dominion release and the Hobgrots models that are now available extremely cheap on eBay. If you're half interested in them, guys, get them now. Is to coincide with these Hobgrot models that are out now. So it's Hobgoblin themed. Some people will be creating Hobgoblin heroes. Some people will be creating units of Hobgoblins, Hobgoblin war machines, whatever you want. If it's Hobgoblin themed, it is applicable to be entered into this competition. So if you're not a member of the forum, please, please, please come sign up, come join us, come get involved in these competitions. Yeah. And then the other announcement to make is that an awful lot of our listeners will be very aware of a company called Russian Alternative. Now, Russian Alternative has serviced our community amazingly well over the last few years, creating very, very cool big hat style sculpts. Yeah, these are big hat Chaos Dwarfs. They call them the Dwarfs of Fire Canyon, but they fit with a more modern aesthetic than this. So they have the same kind of design cues as the original 93 Dwarfs, but they wouldn't look out of place next to your Legion of Asgore models. Yeah, they wouldn't look out of place next to your Lost Kingdom models. They have a gritty realism at the same time. Now, we have it on good authority that if you want Russian Alternative models, the time to buy them is probably now. There is a quite high chance that this company won't be operating this time next year. Everything that is in stock on their store right now is there to be bought. But we cannot be 100% sure that it will be getting restocked. We cannot be 100% sure that new things will be getting created. I've been speaking a little bit with Sergey from Russian Alternative, and the message seems to be that if you are into Russian Alternatives miniatures, if you want some of these in your collection, the time to get them is now, because it might be too late, and then you might be paying some horrible eBay prices for what is then an out of production model. So if you're into Russian Alternative models, now's the time to get them. So, ladies and gents, that's all we have time for today. If you want to get involved in our community, we have the Facebook, we have Twitter, we now have Instagram, we have a Discord, and of course the most important place for you to be is our forum. Okay, we are active on lots of different platforms of social media where you can engage with us and you can get involved in the Chaos Dwarf community. But the forum is the real heart of what we are all about. And the forum lasts. What you put on a forum goes into like a library of ideas that can be picked up on for forever. Stuff on the Facebook, stuff on the Twitter, by the very nature of these social medias, disappears over time. But the forum lasts. So come get involved in any of those platforms. But 100% come and visit us on the forum. All of us guys are active there. The guys whose work you've just seen on today's podcast, they're all active there. It'd be great for you to come and get engaged and get involved in our community. But that is all we have time for tonight. So we will say goodbye and we'll see you next episode. Ta-da, guys. Bye.
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 Guys.